Many people know what it means to be the strong one, but a lot of people that don't know, don't talk about really what happens when the strong one begins to feel overwhelmed. So, this is what we're going to talk about today. Because who is the strong one? This is the person that people call whenever there's something going on. You're the ones that solve problems. You're the one that keeps the peace. You hold everything together. But when you are tired, you're not only physically tired, you may be emotionally tired and spiritually tired as well. So I want to bring some encouragement to you today. Every family we know has somebody that they consider to be the strong one. I was thinking about this earlier, and my mom is definitely one that would be considered a strong one. All my life, I can remember her always being the one that people can depend on, especially her parents, family, people. She's always been the dependable one. Seriously, it's like if you need something or whatever, she will be there, and she's still that way to this day. And she was the one that my grandparents relied on her a lot for things that they needed, and caring for them and different things like that. Then she helped other family members as well, and so she's always been in that position. And eventually, as she was being a musician at church, helping out her parents, doing so much, she realized it was too much for her to be able to do. So she ended up having to retire from being a musician, because she was doing that on top of everything else that she was doing. So strong people do get tired. And with you being the strong one, you always the one, like we said, you hold everything together. But people always usually depend on you because they know that you're going to get it done. They know you're the one that never falls through. You always do what you say you're going to do. But then we have to remember as well that there's nothing wrong with being strong. Being strong is not a bad thing, because it's good to be dependable. It's good to be responsible. That's a good thing. But a lot of times, those who are like that, they can fall. The strong ones can fall into. Um, I don't want to know if I want to say a trap, but over time they end up carrying more than they were meant to carry. So many times, instead of sharing the burden, they end up taking on everything themselves. And many times it can be because they may try to depend on other people, but other people may not come through. So they figure, hey, why ask for help when I can do it right by doing it myself? But Galatians 6:2, what does it say? That we ought to bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. So it's talking about us being there for one another. That if we see someone that needs help, we should be there to help them. So burdens are meant to be shared. As us as believers, burdens are meant to be shared. But there are many strong people who are living in situations where, like I said, they don't have everybody leans on them, but who do they lean on? So let's talk about we kind of going over what we've already talked about in a way, about how people become strong. Or we say, and we know that most of the time strong people, they don't wake up one day and say, oh, well, I'm just going to take on everything and be everything and do everything. Usually that's something that they've been given in life. Maybe that's their part of their DNA, their personality. They've always been like that from a child. They've always been dependable. They've always been responsible. This is just something that is instilled in them. This is just in them. So there are many times that you know you could be people growing up in an environment where maybe there was chaos and emotions was all over the place, and or they had to grow up quickly, and then so without basically um, planning for it to happen, they end up becoming the one that's responsible. So the one that, people may get out of line or things going on, but they're the ones that could calm everything down, could solve the problems, that can make sure nothing went lacking or anything like that. And so a lot of times that strength that strong ones have came out of a place of survival, but it can also end up being kind of dangerous. Why is that? Is because we may, end up believing that if we don't do it, it's not going to work. Or we the ones that have to hold it together, and I have to do what nobody else will do. And this is why a lot of strong people end up carrying burdens they were never meant to carry. So let's talk about what are some silent struggles that strong people go through. I think one of the hardest things about being strong is you struggle silently, because a lot of times you don't want to show your pain. You don't want to complain. You don't really want to tell people how you really feel. You just keep functioning. You keep helping, you keep supporting everybody. But on the inside, you're dealing with exhaustion, loneliness, frustration. You may be spiritually fatigued. And then sometimes the strong one you don't see the breakdown in a, I guess, in a visible way. It could be happening on the inside. So the breaking could be quiet. It can continue to smile, continue to encourage, show up and do what needs to be done. But inside, it may be saying, okay, well, who is checking on me? Who's going to support me? Who's going to carry my burdens? What if I need time off? Can I depend on anybody to give me that? Am I able to have that? And many times, we can assume that those who are strong, because they appear to be good on the outside, they're calm, they're capable, or all these other things, we can assume that they're fine because we don't see them breaking down at all. But do you know, because you're being strong doesn't mean that you don't need support. So let's talk about Elijah. We know that Elijah had a time where he was just exhausted. He was discouraged. So we know that he was one of the most powerful prophets in the Bible. And we know in 1 Kings 18, he experienced very huge victories, how God used him when he came and stood against the prophets of Baal, Jezebel's prophets. He called down fire from heaven. God moved and used him in a mighty way. God showed his power. But then we see in the next chapter, something happens. He runs into the wilderness. He sits under a tree, and he talks about how exhausted he is. He's discouraged. He's overwhelmed. And we know that Jezebel threatened him. We know that was what really caused him to run off. And so he's had enough. He's like, look, I'm doing all of this. I feel like I'm by myself. I feel like I got the weight of everything on me. I'm the only one that's representing God. I'm the only one that's standing for righteousness. I'm the only one. He felt like he was by himself. So isn't that how strong people are? You feel like you're the only one that's doing things that need to be done. And honestly, sometimes you may be the only one. So here it is. When he basically just broke down and said he just couldn't do it anymore. He was discouraged. He wanted his life to be over. So this was the same man of God that God used, that he stood before kings. This was the one that God used to do mighty things. He was even overwhelmed. But what is so powerful about this is that God didn't make him feel bad for why he was feeling the way he was. He didn't shame him. God didn't rebuke him. He didn't criticize him for being tired. What did God do? He knew he needed rest. He needed to be replenished. He needed to be restored. He needed to be revived. And there are many times that, the most spiritual thing that anybody who's strong can do is to actually be honest about where you are, how you feel, and how exhausted you may be. So let's talk about how God never intended for us to carry things the way we do. There are a lot of times as strong people are carrying things that they really shouldn't be carrying, and God never told them to. So we know that everyone, and it can be carrying people's emotional baggage or struggles, problems, um, those things that only God can fix. So some things are also a part of people's growth process. So we can't really carry somebody through a growth process. There are many times why they're dealing with things the way they're dealing with things is because maybe this is the area they need to grow in. So what does Jesus tell us? Matthew 11:28. Come unto me all who labor and are heavy laden. And what will he do? He will give you rest. So this is what he invites us to do. This is our staple scripture throughout the series. He invites us to come to him to rest. Don't carry another thing. And so sometimes strong ones need to remember that they're not the savior of everybody around them. That only Jesus, he's the only one that has that role. So if you're the strong one, God sees what you've been carrying. He sees all the sacrifices you've made. He sees the nights that you stay strong for everybody. But please hear me today. You do not have to carry everything by yourself. Even Jesus had help carrying his cross. So strength doesn't mean that you never need support, or you can never admit that you're tired, or you can never break down or have a moment. But strength also means that you can be honest about the weight that you've been carrying. So I have a question for you before we get ready to close out. Are you the strong one in your family? Are you the strong one on your job? Are you the strong one that no matter where you go, it's like it's a target on you, people see. And wherever you go, that the same responsibilities, the same weight follow you everywhere you go. If you are, who supports you? I would like to hear from you in the comments. So I hope that this was a blessing to you. And we will see you on the last and final episode of this series. How do we relinquish control? Because remember, we talked about in the last episode how a lot of times it can turn into control because you're used to having things be a certain way. And sometimes it can be fearful to let go of not having to do everything and be everything. So we're going to talk about that next week, how we handle that. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you all have a great day, and I will see you on the next one.